With me today, we have Riley Gale from Power Trip. How's it going, Riley?
Pretty good. How are you fellas doing?
Doing great. Yeah, I first saw Power Trip open up for Ringworm. I think it was in 2012, and you guys just you guys just immediately blew me away because I don't think I've seen since a band as tight or as full of energy as you guys were at a venue like Beerland. And in the years since, it seems like you've just toured nonstop all around the world and with a million different bands. And it seems like every show that I've seen you at least, you give it your all. How can you keep up this pace?
Oh, I probably can. It'll kill me. Eventually, it'll kill me. I actually fell off of the stage 3 years ago and landed on I basically impaled myself on the sharp corner of a step leading up to the stage in New York, and I actually have like a permanent back injury. So it's hard, man, but I can't really go out there and not give it all I've got.
You know, I was listening to the new record, Nightmare Logic, and my favorite track on there is Waiting Around to Die, which is a song about addiction and the pharmaceutical industry. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and does your chronic injury play into that?
Yeah, it's I really love the Townes Van Zandt song, but I feel like the message is a little off. You know, he basically admits at the end of the song that he's fallen in love with codeine, and that this lady codeine is you know, something to just wait around to die. And I've had a lot of friends who've struggled with addiction. Our roadie is 6 years clean. And, you know, it's more of a personal song about how if you want to break that cycle of addiction, you have to want to. And it's sort of my perspective of standing by and watching people, you know, get hooked and ask for help. And it's my sort of reflection on being someone watching someone who is destroying their life with drugs and wanting to kind of pull them out of that you know, situation, but they have to want to be helped at the same time, you know. Hood, our roadie, he wasn't able to get clean until he decided, I'm not going to do heroin anymore. And so I think that was a very powerful thing, and he's a really stubborn person. So if anybody was able to tell a drug to fuck off, it's Hood. You know, he's a kind of stubborn person, and I think, you know, I certainly don't want to fall into that trap either, given, you know, I'm in a lot of pain a lot of times, and I do have to take some painkillers and things like that. But, you know, it's never a situation where I'm getting high or anything like that. And I think that is a scary situation where you can become addicted to something, you know, and not even enjoy it in a sense, just to basically maintain it. But it's essentially just kind of a song that I don't think, you know, life is worth waiting around to die. I don't think that it's worth embracing alcoholism or addiction or your depression or things like that, you know? So it's sort of it's more so rather than, and of course, like, you know, some Executioner's Tact in a way is about tackling the pharmaceutical industry at large. But this one's a bit more personal and kind of just my response to that Townes Van Zandt song. Because I love the song, but I just think the message is a little off, so.
You know, there's kind of an interesting connection there, I guess, with Townes Van Zandt and you guys, and that I recently saw a picture of Ryan Adams, a noted Townes Van Zandt fan. He's done a number of covers. He was wearing a Power Trip shirt. What is it like having celebrity fans like that?
I mean, it's cool. It sometimes I wonder if guys like Ryan just wear it to look cool because we're sort of a hyped up band, but you know, like, it's obviously an honor. I'm not a big fan of Ryan Adams' music, but he and I have talked, and he's a nice guy, you know, and I think that you know, just the fact that he supports the band means a lot to us. The other day, Chris Jericho left a comment on Metal Sucks saying that he had discovered the band, and I thought that was really cool because I actually met him in LA on the Lamb of God Anthrax tour, but he missed our set. But he was a really, really nice guy, you know, was asking what our band name was, where we're from, what we were about, and I don't think he went home and checked it out. I don't even know if he made the connection that we had met, but yeah, there's some other guys out there. Matt Matheson is a big celebrity chef that does a lot of work with Vice. He's a guy who actually kind of really actually came up in punk, and so that's cool to know that, you know, it's really nice seeing a lot of these people who have gotten big in whether it's the music industry, TV industry, basically any industry. It's cool seeing people take their sort of punk ethos and apply it to another, you know, industry and become successful at it. Josh Barnett, the UFC fighter, he's a fan. There's a couple other guys here and there, and it's just nice. It's just a nice, flattering thing, you know. Blake from Workaholics is a fan.
Oh yeah, I actually I saw that guy in the pit at I think a Code Orange show a few years ago.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah, Blake's a really good guy. Super nice. Very, very accommodating dude, and apparently has a killer sangria recipe. So says our roadie.
That is awesome. Yeah, you mentioned that tour with Anthrax and Lamb of God. That has, you know, you've toured with a million bands, but that has to be the most high-profile one yet. What was that experience like for you?
It was awesome. It kind of confirmed for me something that I had long suspected with the band, which was if you're a fan of aggressive music, just get in a room with us and you'll leave a fan of our band, or at least you'll leave saying, well, that didn't suck. You know, it was really cool because, you know, I believed for a long time that we could do this on a big level, and we just needed that right opportunity. I think it was the perfect timing for us to do that, and the reactions were great. We never had a bad show on that tour, and it was great because, you know, Chris Olson, the drummer, and I would, you know, we'd walk around the crowd, you know, before, like, as soon as doors open, and, you know, we'd hear people be like, all right, you know, let's get these two faggot opening bands out of the way so Anthrax can come up on stage, and then you know, we'd go up and play and do our thing, and we didn't really change much about anything regarding, you know, how we carry ourselves on stage. And then afterwards, you know, the same guys at our table buying our CD being like, that was the best fucking opening band I've ever seen. And, you know, it was cool. It made me realize that maybe we do have a shot of doing this as a career, that maybe, you know, we could be a band that actually, you know, people care about in 5 years, 10 years, you know. I'm not really trying to put any, you know, expectations on it, which is great because then, you know, when they exceed them, it just feels that much better. So that was an amazing experience.
Well,
and it was a tough one too. We had some crazy stuff happen. We drove through a really wild winter storm that hit the East Coast, and our bandwagon's generator died. So we were basically just driving through this snowstorm with, you know, in pitch black, and there was ice forming on the inside of this like basically was just a meat locker now, and the driver is disconnected from the cab, so you know, we were just like kind of I guess waiting around to die, sort of just like just sitting there kind of waiting. So it was great. You know, it was an awesome experience, a real character builder, if you will.
Yeah, when something sucks, it's a character builder. It seems to me like winning over dudes that haven't probably listened to a new metal band in like 20 years, you should be on the right path. That seems like the most difficult thing to do, so...
Yeah, my favorite compliments are certainly, you know, I love when we like can impact a young kid, but I love it when the older gentlemen kind of come up and show us respect and tell us, you know, a lot of times it was like, I haven't seen a band that excited me like that since, you know, the 80s, since I started going to shows or whatever. And that was a really, really cool feeling to sort of, get in touch with these guys' childhoods and help them feel excited, for what we were doing. So it was awesome. We had a lot of that, and I hope to have a lot more,
Yeah. So that being said, is there anyone that you're dying to play a show with now? I mean, you've had so many high profile spots now.
Yeah, there's still plenty of bands I would love to tour with. I mean, I think if you're talking, Obituary, Slayer, Exodus, Metallica would be a dream come true. There's a lot of bands that I think we still want to get out there and do things with that are bigger than us. I don't think that we've reached our target audience by any means. I think that we could go out and with any of those bands that, there's not very many bands that in modern metal that are bigger than Lamb of God. It really doesn't get much bigger than that. And so, at this point, it's just like, I'd like to see who would like to take us out, I think that'd be more interesting to see, because, we didn't see Lamb of God coming. That was not like, in my mind, I was thinking, a big tour that would really help us out, that was sort of like a crossover into metal, was like, my ideal was like Hatebreed or something like that. So when Lamb of God came calling, I was like, this is insane. We really didn't think that a band that big had heard of us or wanted to take us out or whatever. Any of those bigger legacy metal bands we would love to go out with. I think that Slayer would obviously be a dream come true.
I gotta ask you, does it bum you out to see Slayer like jumping on the Trump train?
Well, it's funny because it seems like it's pretty divided within the band. Tom says that stuff, but then I think Carrie came out and said something that basically Tom's views don't match up with ours or something like that. It's weird. It seems like they are kind of divided in that sense, and I don't know. It's funny because Slayer has never been a band that's been very political. Certainly, they've been dragged into political conversations based on their imagery and the whole satanic panic of the '80s and things like that. And it's interesting, but if and not to diss Tom, but I feel like maybe his opinion came from a place that wasn't quite as educated as it should have been. I really would like to know. It would be interesting to have a conversation with him regarding why he feels like a Trump supporter.
Would you ever turn down a tour offer from a band if you vehemently disagreed with their political stance? Like, if Dave Mustaine comes calling, is that an automatic yes or no?
We already did. Superjoy and Ritual asked us to go out.
Oh,
we
shit.
Had a huge, this last tour that they just did.
As a Dallas fan, that's got to be fucking hard.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard, but you know what? It was one of these things where, it was only a year ago since Phil got busted Sieg Heiling on camera, and one of the guys from Prig Destroyer, I believe it was Blake, he plays in a band with Phil, and he was there, and he sort of explained that what Phil was doing was actually being sarcastic, and he was actually trying to address these hecklers. But you know what? He's done some stuff that's just made us feel too uncomfortable, and I didn't want to go out there and feel like I needed to be the guardian for Phil Anselmo regarding his politics, and I certainly didn't want to come out there and end up disagreeing and then being on tour with the band that hates us for our politics for the next few months. I mean, it was a really hard thing to turn down. I would love to see what Phil really is like as a person. I believe that he probably is a good person at the end of the day. And, we've toured with I Hate God, and Jimmy Bauer's a pretty good guy. So it was one of those things where it was, do we want to, it more so kind of had to do with his fans that kind of follow him around. Do we want these sort of, lower income, kind of trailer trashy metal guys who just worship Phil Anselmo, do we want them to be exposed to our band and then maybe, become associated with a scene or a group of people that we don't necessarily agree with? Yeah, so it was tough. I would love an opportunity to maybe play with Phil and get to know him as a person, but to commit to a 5-week tour with a guy who has done and said some questionable things that we don't agree with was something that we just kind of said wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth the risk. We didn't need the tour, as cool as it would have been. Power Trip didn't need to go on tour with Superjoint Ritual.
Yeah.
So
that's very respectable. I mean,
I think, like as you said, we'd have to take it as a case-by-case basis. Mustaine is a tricky guy. The thing is I've never been a huge Megadeth fan to begin with, and I don't have a problem if he's a Christian, he's openly Christian, and that's fine. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you're not a dick to me, I'm not going to be a dick to you when it comes to religion and spirituality and things like that. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where if we do get offered Lamb of God totally had some questionable fans. Anthrax too. Some guys who want it's okay to kind of wave a Confederate flag or we saw a guy with SS bolts and a Hitler in the Third Reich tour T-shirt kind of thing. Have you seen that shirt? It's like a really tasteless shirt, but it's supposed to look like a punk band shirt, and it says Hitler in the Third Reich, and then on the back it's like European tour, 1942 to 45 or whatever.
Oh, good Lord.
It's got it's got the dates on there of all the countries that he invaded, like Poland and things like that. And this guy's buying all this Anthrax merch, and we're like, does this guy know that
Scott Ian's a Jew?
Anthrax? yeah. So it was like, but we had heard I talked to some friends, Tony Foresta, being from Richmond, knew Randy, and I had heard good things, that Randy had a good head on his shoulders, and all those guys very clearly did, and so that was cool. That was not that was an easier decision to make, so to speak. But I think we would just have to take it on a band by band basis, and what kind of political influence they're really pushing out there. It's one thing to say you are a Christian like Mustaine, and then it's another thing to actually go out there and promote some kind of hateful speech, some kind of hateful rhetoric. You gotta.
I mean, regardless, I bet he did Crossbreaker.
I hope so. I don't know. I wonder if Mustaine's heard the band.
I just have to assume he hasn't listened. He's one of those dudes that hasn't listened to metal in 20 years as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't think he's. I don't know. It's interesting. I would be very curious to think what some of our heroes would think of the album. I would love for Slayer to hear the album and see what they think.
I mean,
just the other day, Sacrilege saw that I gave them a shout out in The Guardian, and they were curious to check us out. I'm interested to hopefully see if they throw out an opinion.
That is awesome. I got a chance to talk with Arthur Rizek, your producer, a while back, I think, before you started recording this record. And it could just be my imagination, but it seems like Nightmare Logic sounds a lot punchier than the kind of super reverby sound of Manifest Decimation. Is that just in my ears, or was that like a decision you guys made together?
No, totally. No. We wanted something that was, I guess, cleaner but still rough around the edges. The first LP was very much an experiment in recording an LP for us. Blake and I had never done it before. Olsh had with Mammoth Grinder, but we had never, tracked an LP. And so, there was and the songs weren't as tight. So we had to sort of rely on some studio magic a little bit more. And then this time around, we're much more confident in the riffs and songwriting than our performances. And we just wanted a cleaner, we wanted something that still had a, watch out, we wanted something that had a very razor sharp sound, but still, was aggressive and kind of dirty.
Yeah, I think you hit it. I'm a big fan of this record. It comes out tomorrow, which is dope. You've got a whole host of tour dates planned, of course. Where are you most stoked about stopping?
A lot of places have started to feel like second homes to us. I really love Toronto. I love playing New York, Chicago, Boston, a lot of those major markets. Anywhere in Texas, really, California. I mean, there's not really anywhere that I am like, oh God, we have to play here. I'm pretty excited about the whole routing. Yeah.
That's awesome. I saw that you've got a date with Iron Age here in Austin, which I'm beyond stoked for. Folks that aren't familiar with Texas hardcore are desperately missing out on Iron Age. Your drummer, actually, is he playing in that as well?
He is. He will be playing guitar that show for Iron Age. Yes.
That is fantastic. So I'd like to encourage all Texans to go out for those dates and get your tickets immediately.
Oh, there's people flying in for that one. That's gonna be a good show. I'm really excited about that lineup. In general, I think it's really the best representation of what's going on in the Texas music scene right now, with Glue playing and the Real Cost playing some younger bands, and I think it's great. Nosferatu. So it's basically all the openers are pretty much the best local bands Austin's got to offer right now, and I think that's awesome.
So you guys have been repping Southern rappers like Project Pat and Juicy J for years, and I actually saw that you played with Tommy Wright III just recently. When did you first get into hip hop?
What's funny is I probably am the least rap hip hop head in the band, but it's always just like something that's fun to listen to. We don't want to hear guitar music, all the time. On tour, we usually have some kind of playlist that we make the sound guy play that is specifically not guitar-driven music, sort of. So it was something that just ended up being fun. Before Juicy J really blew up as a solo artist, when he first dropped Zip in a Double Cup, he did a South by Southwest show at Cheer Up Charlie's, I think. And it was fucking crazy. It was like 700 people just going off, and it pretty much looked like a hardcore show. And I just think it was fun to call back to some of the other aspects of underground culture. Granted, DJ Screw's basically a household name now, but for a long time he wasn't. And so I just think it's cool being able to embrace just being able to play with anybody, kind of. We did a show with Big Frida too, and we played with Antoine, who's an underground rapper, multiple times. And I think it's just not something we just want it to not be something that feels like we can't do, or people that we can't embrace. Now, I don't know if we'll be doing a song like like Biohazard and Onyx or whatever. I don't know if we'll be doing any collaborations with rappers, but I just think that, a lot of kids like rap too. And so, if we have an opportunity to play an interesting show and a rapper's involved, then fuck yeah, let's do it. You know, I just think it's just good music, so it's worth you know, having some fun with, I guess.
Definitely. That's a shame about the collaboration. I was really hoping Big Frida might be interested, you know, combining some New Orleans bounce with some crossover.
You know what? If she wants to, I'm sure we can do something. We just don't want to ever feel like anything's forced. If we could somehow write a crossover rap song, you bet, and think that it sounds good, you bet that we'll do it. You know, we're not afraid of that. It's just the right opportunity has to present itself.
Hell yeah!
You could have the next, you know, Anthrax hit with the Big Frida.
Yeah, maybe. So I don't know.
Drop the booty.
I've heard rumors. There's some rumors out on the street that a certain label is trying to do a Judgment Night 2
type of
soundtrack where hardcore and metal bands are going to be collaborating with rappers. Now I don't know who or what or when, but we have been approached. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. But
this has just become my most anticipated record of all time. So your new record, it's overtly punk, and you're shouting down kind of the people and the institutions that would oppress us. And in the current state of politics in America, it all seems utterly hopeless. How do you think that we can affect change?
I think it's just taking on more personal responsibility to do something. Whether it is being charitable or protesting, or, you know, it kind of always starts at home with yourself, learning and being aware of the world around you and trying to kind of lift that veil of rhetoric or media bias or whatever, you know, trying to see the world how it really is, and putting a value, you know, making sure that human life, all human life is precious. And I just think that there's certain things that if everybody kind of had this epiphany, that we could fix a lot of things very quickly. But people sort of want to stay sheltered. They want to stay in that, you know, in the cave, you know, to kind of bring up Plato's idea of the cave and staying inside the cave and sort of this kind of complacent ignorance, sort of. And so, you know, Nightmare Logic is essentially about identifying the sort of waking nightmare that we are living in, that we call reality, and figuring out a way to navigate it and sort of maintain a sense of optimism and maybe try and change the world for the better in a better way. You know, I don't have all the answers to that, and a lot of it, you know, I'm starting to reflect on what my personal responsibility is as someone in a band with influence. You know, how can I influence people, and how political do I want to get with our music and things like that. And so, you know, and it's interesting. I think that the way that, you know, those in power, you know, we could call them the 1%, or you want to call them the Illuminati, whatever. They've conditioned, you know, the American people, and, you know, sort of a bigger global picture. They've conditioned people to not have value for human life, and you know, it's one of those things where it's like, a cop shot another unarmed black man. Just another day in the news, kind of thing. And that's really fucking dark to me. And I think that, you know, at the end of the day, the people in power, this 1%, this small, you know, group of people, if everyone, you know, woke up and decided we're not going to take this shit anymore and stormed, you know, the White House and dragged these people out, you know, and kind of have like a mutiny, if we had a real revolution, that I think that we could really do something great. I do think that we could, you know, kind of save this world. But, you know, right now, if we don't, we're in a bad place. I see us having a huge paradigm shift of how, you know, the world works, and I think that we're going to live through some really dark moments and see some really scary things. And I think, and that's what a song like "If Not Us, Then Who" is exactly about that. We can't sit around and wait for, you know, the second coming of Christ or some guy who's got it all figured out. You know, it's something that we're going to have to constantly reassess. You know, our power structures and the way we govern, and you know, and we have to start understanding that now that we're all connected, you know, whether it be the internet or whatever, we live in a globalized society where, you know, news travels fast, and I don't think that, and I'm starting to get into some more radical territory here, but, you know, I'm starting to see that borders and nations are becoming less and less pointless, that we're all just citizens of Earth, and we're not going anywhere. You know, we're trying to you know, get our space program back on because we're destroying our planet, and future generations are going to need somewhere to live if the human race is going to survive. So, you know, we got to start now, and whether it's starting small and, you know, maybe you know, finding something that you're passionate about and trying to use that to make the world a better place, I guess, is and so this sort of conditioning we've had, I think we can turn into a weapon in some instances, and not necessarily a physical weapon, but, you know, a symbolic weapon of being able to, you know, we've had these figures condition us not to give a shit about human life. Well, let's go take out these people who are evil, who are oppressive, who, you know, that are controlling things. You know, I think left or right, we don't trust our government, and we don't believe in it anymore. And not that a lot of people ever did, but, you know, I think that it's really important for us to kind of start planning and examining what's going to happen over the next 10, 15 years.
Are you encouraged? Are you encouraged by the current wave of large-scale protest that's going on?
I am encouraged by it, but the thing is that it's kind of it's frustrating because, you know, it's so easy to make it feel like it's unimportant. You know, watching like Fox News after the Women's March, it was like, oh, these bitchy women don't know what they want. They're all just out there protesting different things. They can't get it figured out. And it's like, no, that's not the case. There's just that many things out there that are fucked up and wrong that attention needs to be brought to. And so I wonder, I'm encouraged by people's willingness, and I'm encouraged by the heightened activism, but I wonder if will it really affect anything? Like, it doesn't really seem like our government gives a shit about the number of protesters, you know? Look at all the arguments over crowd sizes and things like that, and it's all to frustrate people and sort of, you know, have this to fatigue them, to tire them out, and hope that they become complacent again. So I hope that this you know, energy, this fire that's been lit under people, I hope it stays burning. You know, I hope that we don't get frustrated and just complacent, you know, and that's sort of what, like, a lot of the songs deal with on the album. Executioner's Tax is kind of just about being comfortable in death, you know, just finding something that makes you numb, whether it's drugs or television or food or whatever the fuck, you know, you use to take your mind off of the fact that, you know, we're living on borrowed time, we're going to die, and it's like, how do you want to leave the world? Do you want to leave it a better place than you left it? Do you care, you know? And it seems like a lot of people really want to try and build a better world, but I just hope that they stay hungry for that, and sure, I think getting some organization would be better, or at least figuring out how to prioritize things. But you know what? That gets into some really complex stuff, deciding who's more important than who right now, which is like kind of the whole point behind Black Lives Matter, is that right now we need to focus on the state of African Americans in this country, which I completely back. I think, I get that, absolutely. But there's so many things wrong that it's kind of like where and when and how and what are we going to do? And so the least that I can do as someone who has a fan base that, if I have a modicum of influence, I want to use it positively and at least preach a broad message of, fuck homophobia, fuck racism, fuck xenophobia, Islamophobia, and that's really tricky. We need to. There are, conservative Islam is undeniably dangerous, and so we need to start being more open to letting progressive Muslim figures be heard. You know what I'm saying? We can't sit there and say that freedom of religion means that making a woman wear a burqa is acceptable or whatever. I think that there's any kind of religious conservatism is dangerous. We can't just allow for a free reign of beliefs because we're not used to seeing it. But we have to be aware of what we're doing and how we're, what we're allowing for acceptable things. I see the church encroaching into the state more and more and more, and it's scary. I believe in religious and spiritual freedom. I don't have a problem with that, but when it becomes oppressive is when we start having an issue,
Yeah, I guess I look at things in terms of institutions, of how much power they wield. And in the way that I see it is the Christian church is, especially the Southern Baptist evangelical variety, is especially oppressive in the United States, more so than many other that I can see. So
right, I was raised Catholic. It never clicked with me from a young age. Something about religion and this sort of leap of faith always bothered me, but to give the Catholics some credit, they were very liberal group of people who believe it. The Vatican allows for homosexual priests because they believe that they're trying to save themselves from their homosexuality, which I don't necessarily agree with. I don't think that homosexuality is a sin, obviously, but I think that it's more progressive than some other sects of Christianity. Sure, I had teachers in high school in my private Jesuit school that were very obviously gay, and we had Jewish students and things like that. And I just believe that spirituality is a personal journey, not something to force onto somebody else. And it's something that can make you happy, and I'm okay with that. I do believe in a higher power in a very vague sense of the word. I'm not an atheist, but I don't believe that there is an organized religion that's got it all figured out. Everything that we have is man-made. I mean, there's that old David Cross bit where he talks about how the Bible is a book that was spoken by this guy and written by this guy that was in this language, and then and he talks about how many times it's been translated. And it's like, how could we have ever gotten that right? It's like you play telephone in a classroom of adults and they can't even get it right. So it's a situation where we have to start going to church, having communion with other people is okay. It's fine. But it's when we start telling other people how to live and they're wrong, and that it just seems so ass backwards to me that we have these people who I mean, dude, Jesus was such a commie. He was such a communist. Well, it's so obvious, and it's so funny to see hateful things being done in his name, sort of. Like
the way I understand it, the way I'm told now is that he's a free market capitalist. Like, it was all socialism. Sorry? It was all socialism until it's the American right decided he was a free market capitalist.
Yeah, and that was over a lot of years. I mean, you've got like the Roman Catholic Empire, who didn't really help with that, and you got the Crusades and all these things, and you know, like historically, it's a very loaded religion. But what religion isn't? You know, I think that there's dangerous religious zealots and conservatives in any particular religion, and it's just one of these things where I just think that they're getting it wrong. You know, I think I would love, you know what would blow my mind is if Jesus did come back, if there was a second coming of Christ, just to see what he would say, just to be like, you guys are all going, like, all you motherfuckers who, all you Southern Baptists, you're the first in line to go to hell. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I strongly believe that if there is some kind of afterlife, kind of a better place type of thing, which I think it's much more ethereal kind of thing. You know, I believe in the idea that, you know, obviously once our bodies degrade and go back into the earth, we end up becoming new living beings, you know, our molecules and whatever. Like, life recycles itself sort of in a way, which is an interesting topic. You know, reincarnation, things like that. But I totally believe that if there was some sort of heaven or hell, the people who are going to get in aren't going to be the ones who do things in the name of Jesus. They're going to be the people who did the right thing in the name of doing the right thing. There's a really great Marcus Aurelius quote that is, I'm not even going to try and say it because I'll butcher it, but that essentially says the same thing. It's like, you know, if there are gods and they are vengeful, then they're not worthy of your praise. If there are no gods, you should just basically do the right thing because it's the right thing. You know, we shouldn't be good to others just for the off chance that there's some spiritual reward at the end of the tunnel, at the light at the end of the tunnel or whatever. So
makes total sense to me. It's sad, the current meme going around super conservative Baptist social media sphere is that if heaven has a tight vetting process and walls, why can't America?
Oh, well. Yeah, that's pretty ironic, right?
That's a new level of ignorant and hateful.
Yeah, they really don't fucking get it. That's for sure.
So, I mean, I don't believe in, you know, any kind of afterlife, but it does give me a little bit of pleasure that should it exist, these people will be burning in hell with me.
Yeah, I think it's funny that as someone who doesn't consider themselves Christian, I feel like I have a better understanding of Christian morals and what a guy like Jesus would expect out of people, you know. So I think I love getting into philosophical debates with people like that, because I could talk circles around them. I went to private school since I was in kindergarten. I know just through school and it being forced on me, I know my way around the Bible. I can talk to these people and explain to them why their thinking is wrong, you know, and it's very odd that we still live in such an ignorant mode of thought, you know, when it comes to forgiveness and the way that we view others and things like that, you know.
Totally, I totally get it. You know, I wanted to ask you. You're known as a pretty literate guy. Do you have any book recommendations? What are you going to be reading on the road?
I'm actually going to be reading a book called Baudolino by Umberto Eco. I'm really excited about that. My friend Max from Primal Right, who's actually doing some of the shows with us sent it to me. So I'm really excited to read that. It's sort of, I think, an alternate historicity versus history kind of thing. I don't really know much about it, but if I had a book that I would recommend to anyone, it's a book called Sphinx, and it was my favorite book of last year, and I think definitely one of my favorite books of all time. And what it is a genderless love story. It's from a first-person view of a man or a woman. They never say. Falling in love with a dancer, a cabaret dancer, whose gender is also never revealed. It's beautifully written, and it's sort of this kind of universal love story. It's actually also a really cool look in like the European house music scene. The main character is a DJ, and it's really, really cool. Just beautifully written, and sort of philosophically along the lines of Camus. There is like a little sort of bit of nihilism in there, but it's beautifully written, and it's actually translated from the French. And my friend Will Evans, who does a publishing company called Deep Vellum, which primarily focuses on first-time translations of books, bringing over obscure Eastern European, I think his focus is Russia a lot, but other texts, and having them translated. There's English writers too, but he produces some great stuff. But Sphinx by Anne Jarretta, I believe is how you would say her name, Garreta, and she was actually invited because of this book, and his book was written in 1986. Because of this book, she was invited into this really snobby group of French writers, this group called the Oulipo. And what they did, their whole goal was to essentially write literature that had some sort of physical restraint on it. So the first book in the Oulipo is, I believe, a book called La Desecration or something like that, and it's a book that is written entirely without using the letter E.
Somebody in the comments was mentioning that book the other day.
Yeah, and there's this overarching sense in the book that these people are missing something from their lives, and it's sort of alluding to the fact that this letter E, like it's almost like this. It's almost like in the way that like God is sort of intangible. That's sort of like untouchable, like mystery of life, sort of, and it kind of revolves around the fact that this guy wrote this book without using the letter E, and so this whole school of, and they're mostly French, I think. They might have entirely be French, but she was the first woman invited into this group of people because she wrote a book where there's no gender pronouns in it, and that's or gender specific things at all, which in French is especially hard to do. So you can admire it reading it in English, but I wish that I knew French so I could appreciate it that much more, because every verb and noun and something has like a gender attached to it. So it's very interesting to think of how it was written that way. There's certain verbiage where like the character doesn't really seem to act upon their own motivations. They're sort of pushed or pulled towards something, because that's how the writer was able to use a neutral position from a writing standpoint. But I think it's just a beautifully written book, and it's a great love story, and I recommend it to everybody. I think it's awesome. I love it. But I also read a lot of comics too. It's really much easier to read in the van, and I think it's a medium that can do a lot of great things. I think you can stay and do a lot of things with comics that other mediums can't. They're basically movie storyboards, some of the really good ones, and so you really can like have the sense of imagination. But there's plenty of people who get into some really deep topics within comics, and that's a medium that within the past few years I've really come to appreciate with what can be done with it. So
anything in particular you want to give out to?
I want to shout out to my friend Alice Cott. He's a great comic book writer, mostly working for Image, does a lot of his own creator-owned stuff. He was actually hired and then subsequently fired by DC, Marvel, and Dark Horse, I believe, for getting a little bit too political. Basically, he would write these. He did a run on Suicide Squad that was essentially a low-key diss to DC and the sexism and racism within the comic book industry. And so he's a kind of a postmodern guy that kind of pushes some buttons. But I really like anything by Jonathan Hickman or Rick Remender. They're both really great. Some of my favorite books going right now is a book called The East of West. Brian K. Vaughan's Saga, which is like one of the biggest comics in the world. Definitely the biggest like non-big superhero. I don't really like big superhero stuff. I like a lot of comics from Image and Fantagraphics and publishers. Anything Brandon Graham does is really good. James Stokoe is incredible. This is a guy who writes, draws letters, does everything himself, but his ability is insane. I recommend this book called Orc Stain, which just has sprawling with imagination. I mean, I think the comic's been around for like 8 years, and the guy's only been able to complete 7 issues just because his I mean, the detail that this guy puts into his work is just unbelievable. And Brandon Graham is another guy who does I really appreciate the people who can do some really crazy world building. But if you take a guy like Hickman, he'll do. I just read the first volume of Black Monday Murders, which is a really cool look at economics, and it's basically what if the stock market was actually controlled by like demonic human sacrifice. Everyone worships all these like big investment bankers and stuff. They worship the god Mammon, which is basically like the negative aspects of money considered, like the manifestation of greed and want of money and wealth and things like that. And it's a really, really cool book. And he always does these really very interesting layouts that have these sort of like informative infographics put into his text, whether they're like footnotes or graphs or things like that. And so that's something that I've never seen anyone do with the comic before. So he'll maybe take an idea that's rooted in the real world, and then sort of with like some real actual information, some historical context, and then go completely off the rails and do something cool about it. So they had the big stock market crash in 29 or whatever, Black Friday or whatever.
Oh yeah, 1929.
That's the one from the Great Depression or whatever. So remember, Winston Churchill was quoted as saying that he saw brokers jumping from the investment towers because they had lost everything. They'd screwed up so bad that they're committing suicide, right? And he's talking about how a lie becomes a historical fact because it was actually what Winston Churchill saw was just a window washer who fell. But he said that stock market crash was so bad people were committing suicide. But the funny thing about it that Hickman does is that he actually says that people were jumping, but what it was like these low-level brokers being sacrificed, like a blood sacrifice. So they've got these really cool panels of these guys being forced out of these windows and being thrown out and things like that. And so, I could talk about comics all day.
That sounds fucking gnarly, and I definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, it's good.
What is it called again?
It's called Black Monday Murders.
Awesome.
And Hickman's got a lot of stuff out right now that is really good, and he does a broad range of stuff. He's got this amazing. One of my favorite comics going right now is East of West, which I mentioned earlier, which is sort of like a post-apocalyptic alternate history where at the Civil War actually ended in a stalemate, and Native Americans were actually able to hold their own and survive based on them making these giant technological advances. So you actually have this America that is divided up into like 6 or 7 different nations. So there's the Endless Nation, which are like Native Americans. There's like a Chinese on the West Coast. There's the Republic of Texas. There's the Kingdom, which is basically if like slaves became more successful. There's this cool alternate history, but it goes way into the future and has to do with like the apocalypse and things like that. This sort of cult religion that all the leaders of the free world are sort of they call themselves the chosen. So this guy's imagination is just awesome. But there's a lot of really great writers out there that do stuff like that. Like I mentioned, my friend Alice does brilliant work. A lot of thinking outside the box. Some people don't like it, but I love it. I think he does some really great stuff too. So
yeah, I haven't really checked out comics.
I could go on and on.
I haven't checked out comics really since I was early teenager, but I am definitely interested in this black market crash.
Yeah, I was, and there's a lot of other stuff. It's just kind of what if there's some sort of topic or part of history or something that you're into, there's probably a comic out there that's really good that you would like. And it was something where I got really burnt out on reading heavy text from college and things like that, and I had a hard time reading in the van. And so I picked up like Preacher and Sandman, and they just blew me away at how expansive comics could be and what they could do, and so I've sort of just been devouring comics. And I don't really collect issues. I'm more of just like a collecting trades kind of guy. But there's some great storytelling in there. There's stuff where you're like, oh, I can't wait until this is a movie or something like that.
Yeah, I remember.
Brandon Graham just did.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. In the '90s, I remember that some smaller studio put out books, short runs for Metallica and Pantera and Slayer, and.
Yeah.
My
friend gave me an issue. My friend gave me an issue of one of those. Well, I would love to collaborate with someone in comics. There's actually one of the more hyped up writers right now is a girl named Becky Cloonan who lives in Austin. And she does a great series called Southern Cross, which is kind of like a sort of dark deep outer space mystery kind of thing. But she's doing this, the Punisher right now. She's tackling the Punisher, and she's fantastic. Huge metalhead. I met her at the Lamb of God tour. She was friends with some of the Death Heaven guys, I believe. But Becky and I have stayed tight, and her schedule is crazy, so I doubt I'll ever be able to work with her, just because she is so in demand right now. But I would love to try and do some sort of collaboration with a comic book artist. I was actually talking to Mike, who plays guitar in Fucked Up, the band Fucked Up.
Yeah.
And he has this idea where he wants to do something where he records music as Fucked Up. We have a friend, maybe Alice, do the lyrics. I sing them, and then we have an artist actually draw the layout and maybe make some sort of like all-encompassing thing. And I think you could do something very cool and postmodern with that. Like, somehow the music, the actual recorded music somehow ties into the story, in the comic or vice versa, something like that. I think I'm a big fan of collaboration, and I think that I would love to get into comics in that sense of the word. I just don't really have any good ideas, but I would love to take a crack at writing one day.
Well, I bet there's a number of
Nightmare Logic, the graphic novel, coming soon. Something like that.
I know there's a number of really talented illustrators that listen to this program, so maybe they can hit you guys up.
Holler at me. Yeah, please.
I think that we've got to wrap things up in just a minute. Is there anything else you wanted to share to the listeners at home?
No, not really. If you don't feel like buying our album, please go download it. Steal it. We don't care. We don't give a shit. We just want people to hear it. And to those of you who do buy it and still support music in physical forms or through iTunes or whatever, thank you very much. Appreciate it. But you know what? We just want people to hear this album. And so, thank you guys for having me. Hopefully, because of this, someone who's never heard of us before checks us out. And for those who do know me, hopefully I didn't sound like too much of a jackass. So.
Fuck yeah. Go see Power Trip. They're probably coming to a town near you. It's an awesome show. Get in the pit. Thanks so much for talking with us,
Riley.
Thanks
for having me, guys.